All right, welcome back, Egyptology lovers. Today we are doing plate 16. Now, plate 16 encompasses several chapters. We're looking at approximately 8 chapters in total. Over here, if you could see, let me just get that finger there going. All right, there you go. So it has many vignettes, which are pictures that go with text, but not all of the Book of the Dead's text actually go with the images that you see here on the actual papyrus. For example, for chapters, here you have chapter 58, which ends around about here. And then in this column right over here, these columns there. And then over here you have chapter 59, and then you have a divider and leads to chapter 44. And then chapter 45, and a little bit of chapter 46. Over here you have chapter 50, and then a large section of chapter 93. And then finally here, these 4 columns, chapter 43. So the chapters aren't always consecutive. They don't go from 1 to 189, which is the number of spells or chapters in the Book of the Dead, but they are handpicked by the author. So Ani could choose what he wanted in the afterlife, and so many others could as well. Also, these 2 particular pages were glued together. If you could see, the color is different than it is here. This is because they select and they take what they need and they put it depending on what the author would like. So let's begin by explaining what's going on here, starting with the chapter here, with the chapter on the very far left. What you have, as you did before in the other plates, if you've seen the other videos, if you like my videos, again, please subscribe and like, or follow me on Instagram. I also have TikTok, Tumblr, and I also have Facebook. So here, let's begin. So we have Ani, which is right here, with his wife Tutu. And they're both together standing in a tree-lined pool of water from which they are drinking and drinking the water. The scene accompanies chapter 58, so this is chapter 58 down here, whose purpose is to guarantee that the deceased will be provided with food and water in the God's domain, in the afterlife. The text begins with dialogue, presumably between Ani and an unknown deity, and this interchange is typically of many of the Book of the Dead's, for it involves a question from the god which Ani must answer correctly. So you have this back and forth dialogue of questions. And Ani is asked a question, and he has to supply the correct answer in order to be able to acquire the knowledge to be able to proceed and pass over across the water. Now, chapter 59, which is the one that follows right over, which has been basically preceding the chapter before, appears next to it. The vignette depicts a tree goddess emerging from a tree trunk. So you can see she's right here, emerging from a tree trunk, and pouring water into the extended hands of the kneeling Ani. This scene was a favorite in contemporary tombs of the Theban nobility of the 18th and 19th dynasties. So this is the time of Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, and Ramses as well. The sycamore of the sky mentioned here apparently can guarantee that the deceased will have water and be able to breathe in the afterlife. The next scene over here is chapter 44. Now, in this one, you can see the line has divided it. So this ends, and then it tells you that the new chapter begins. So this is another feature of the Book of the Dead. Some of them do, some of them don't. Now, several other chapters and plates show the same misalignment in their division and the markers of the sheet. So you can see it's a bit of a misalignment issue, but that's not a big deal. Chapter 44 shows Ani sitting before an offering table stacked with bread loaves. So you can see the bread loaves. And they are shaped in the form of reed leaves, which is a hieroglyph in itself, and it's the letter I. A very frequent motif which appears in old tombs, the stela and papyrus from the Old Kingdom. They had this in the Old Kingdoms. If you look at their blocks or their different offerings that they do, even through false doors as well. Ani holds a walking stick and a wand-like scepter, 2 common marks of the official status. So he's holding it right over here and here. And this is also the word for or offering, I apologize, or giving. So there he's also giving something in return. So everything is very ritualistic. Now, the object of this chapter is to prevent Ani from dying a second death in the God's domain. The reference to the imperishable stars, which are actually down here, the imperishable stars right over here, this is imperishable stars. All right, this is a reference to this. Connects the most desirable afterlife with an existence in the realm beyond earth and sky. The short dialogue accomplishes this purpose by presumably showing Ray that not only is the deceased his son, but also that he knows the God's secrets, which is very important to know. All right, the next chapter is 45. In this chapter, you have Anubis attending the standing mummy of Ani. Anubis was the deity responsible for embalming and the preservation of the corpse. His presence here might have been felt to be essential to the particular purpose of the chapter, which is to prevent the putrefaction of the corpse from decomposing. Anubis, however, is not mentioned in the text, which seeks to identify Ani with Osiris, because Osiris is the god who overcame putrefaction in the afterworld, where Anubis is the one trying to prevent it. So you want to associate with yourself with someone who actually overcame it. All right, the next one over is we have chapter 46, and we encounter a doorway flanked by a heron, presumably the Bennu bird, and Ani's ba in the form of a human-headed bird. So, I'm sorry, right over here. Yeah, so the Bennu bird and a doorway and Ani's ba right over here. And the rubric states that this chapter, like the preceding one, is intended to ensure that Ani shall live and not perish in the god's domain. The text that accompanies this chapter varies greatly among the papyri containing it. Some versions, but not the one which appears here mentioned in the doorway. All right, moving over is the next chapter, which is chapter 50. This scene shows Ani striding away from a highly stylized representation of chopping block. He's shying away from it. This is the Nemet, or the slaughterhouse of the god, mentioned in the text. You'll see it in the text below. Above the chopping block is a knife dribbling with blood. The text begins by speaking of 4 knots which are tied about Ani, a reference to magical practice in which enemies are disarmed by tying representations of them into knots. In this case, the knots are tied about Ani protectively, and their potency is increased by including pieces of hair. Set, in this case, he's also described here, who's the evil uncle of Horus, who plucked out the Eye of Horus, which we have the Eye of Horus, who so often is negatively a figure in the Book of the Dead, appears here in a positive role as one of Ani's protectors. It is typically Egyptian that even something that is generally negative could also have positive aspects to it. For example, Set was well known for helping Ra pass in the darkness from the east to west to defeat the evil serpent Apep, and he fought and assisted Re in that because it also involved his world, so he needed to be there to help. Now, in the next rubric, which we have over here, the chapter for not letting Ani be ferried over the east in the god's domain, right over here. This is the chapter for the 93. This continues actually right over here. 93. Now, in this chapter, since a boat appears in the adjoining vignette but not here, some manner of copyist errors probably happened here. Instead of the vignette shows Ani in a posture of adoration facing a row of 3 gods, which are not named. So we can only assume it's considered the plural form. So anything that's 3 is considered plural. A scene having no apparent thematic connection with travel. None whatsoever. There is, however, possible reference to the east and Ani's unusual position in this scene. The only time, this is really the only time, the entire papyrus, when he is shown on the right side of the scene and facing the left. As explained before, the left represents the east in the papyrus. You can see that on plate 5 and 6. Since other papyri have different versions of the vignette for this chapter, the significance of this scene and reasons for its orientation, we don't know. Up to this point, Ani has been shown facing right and is presumably progressing further towards the west and his ultimate goal, because you're moving from east to west. You want to go to the afterlife. Perhaps the scribes who composed this papyrus chose this vignette for chapter 93 simply because it offered more space for inscribing the text. So they clipped out, they found this chapter, wrote his name on it, glued it together, good enough. Sometimes it happens like that. The tone of this chapter is magical throughout. Ani asserts that he possesses great powers and that he will bring harm to Re. This is stated over here, that he'll bring harm to Re, Osiris, and Khepri, who is the scarab beetle god, and Atum, who was the creator in the very beginning of the primordial mound, should any harm be done against him. Now, this is unusual. The notion of threatening the gods is completely alien to our religious consciousness, because we don't threaten Allah or Buddha or Yahweh or even our God in the Christian religion. It's completely alien to our ideas, but occasionally it appears in the Egyptian religion material. The beginning of the text with its reference to the phallus of Re and its connection with the god Bebi, is actually quite unclear in the translation presented below, so that's unusual. So let's go to the final one. Chapter 43. Judging from where the title appears in the next vignette, this is what we have. Now the title of this chapter informs us that the purpose was to prevent the deceased from having his head taken off from him in the god's domain. In this case, however, we encounter a scene which depicts 𝑓𝑛𝑖 holding his scribal palette, because he was a scribe. He's holding it right there. All right. And in one hand, while the other is raised in adoration, extended out in front of him in the gesture of invocation. In front of 𝑓𝑛𝑖 is a small ferry boat with a divine being squatting in it. This figure holds a flail. If you can see it, he's holding a little flail right there. And his head is reversed upon his body. It's facing the other way, 180 degrees, as if he must look backwards perpetually, so constantly looking back. Now this personage is obviously the querulous and quarrelsome divine ferryman known from a number of other papyrus of the Book of the Dead, and especially from chapter 99, which is not present in this papyrus of 𝑓𝑛𝑖. The name of the backwards-looking ferryman in the vignette is known from chapter 99 as Mahaf, he who looks behind himself, a misinterpretation of his original name, which actually meant the stern is behind him. So there's the explanation for the Book of the Dead for this particular plate 16 and its purpose. And please stay tuned. We're going to start reading the text falling from retrograde. We're going to read from the very top over here and work our way westward or left to right. So that's what we're going to do. Keep in mind that the books are generally written from right to left, but this is called retrograde, where they're writing in the opposite direction. We don't know why, but if you watch my other videos, I explain some of the information. Thank you, and please stay tuned. All right, now, so we're going to go ahead and begin reading the hieroglyphs, starting from the very far left on the top here with the red. Now, the difference between the red and the black is the red introduces a sentence or an idea, or in particular case, the spell, and then the black is the text itself. Sometimes you have red in between the text. Sometimes they want you to notate this particular passage that's coming after it, or the passage that is in red in between the spells. So that could be one of the many reasons as well. So let's begin here. This says, the first one, Chapter 4, breathing, air, and having power over water in the god's domain, words spoken by, this is pretty standard, the Osiris Ani. Open to me this. Who are you of? What are you? Where did you grow or grow up? I am one of you, in who is with you. This is the two songstress serpents, so the two serpents that sing. You shall separate from it, from head to head, approaching the Milky Way. The Milky Way. It has been given that I may cross to the mansion to find the faces. Pulling together of souls is the name of the ferryman, the person who ferries the boat. Tresses of dressed hair is the name of the oars of the boat. Thorn is the name of this. Its bailers. Precise and accurate is the name of the steering oar. You who smooth things over, so this is smooth things over, and who buried yourself, which continues up here, in the open waters. 4. You have given to me jugs of cow's milk, shen's loaf or chen cakes, Percy loaf, and a jug of beer. A portion of meat, which goes all the way here, meat, in the mansion of Anubis. As for he who knows this chapter, this is 𝑓, we don't pronounce it, it's telling you a sentence is a new sentence is coming up. He will go in after going out in the god's cemetery or burial area of, after this there's supposed to be the beautiful west or the west, but it's not in here. So it was probably omitted because they needed to make room for the next chapter. So it should have continued on the very top, but that would interfere with the next chapter. Continuing here to the next chapter. Chapter of breathing air and having power over water in the god's domain, words spoken by the 𝓿𝓖𝑓𝑖𝑒. O you of the sycamore of the sky, may I be given in of the air which is in it. I am he who sought out that throne which is in the middle of 𝓿𝓈�𝑓𝑖𝑒. This is 𝑒w, it's not pronounced, it's a new sentence. I have guarded this or that egg of the great cackler. If it grows, I will grow. If it lives, I will live. If it breathes air, I will breathe air. The 𝓿𝓖𝑓𝑖𝑒 in vindication. So this completes this chapter. We'll move to the next one. So the chapter we finished was 59. The previous one before that one, that chapter was chapter 58. And now we are moving to chapter 44. And it's right over here. So this says, the chapter for not dying again in the god's domain, words spoken by the 𝓿𝓖𝑓𝑖𝑒. My cavern has opened. This means repeat twice. I've done this in different plates. When you see this, just repeat the sentence twice again. So, my caverns have opened. The spirits fall within the darkness. Now, have you noticed here, there's this line that divides. This is incorrectly done by the copyist. This was supposed to be over on this side, and this was supposed to be over here, the bar, the yellow bar, but they made a mistake. So perfect example of mistake. So let's continue from darkness. My sacred Eye of Horus, which makes me holy. 𝓿𝓖𝑓𝑖𝑒 has caressed it, which continues here, caressed it. O imperishable stars, the imperishable stars, allow me to be among you. O neck of Re, another sentence, my vision is cleared. And now another sentence, my heart is in the proper place. My mouth is known. I am Re, he who protects himself. I, this, do not know you. I, this, do not look after you. Your father, the son of 𝓄𝓈𝓇, lives for you. I am your eldest son, who sees your secrets. This is 𝑓. We don't pronounce this. It means a new sentence is next. I have appeared as king of the gods, and I will not die again in the God's domain. All right, now we're entering chapter 45. In this particular chapter here, as demonstrated in the vignette, states, chapter for not putrefying or decaying in the God's domain, words spoken by the Osiris Ani. Weary. Now this means repeat twice again. So you say it weary, weary. O weary, continues here, weary, limbs of Osiris. It, or they, shall not be weary. It shall not putrefy. It shall not decay. It shall not swell up. And may this be done, past tense, to me in this manner, or like in this manner. For I am, this is together, I am the Osiris. As for him who knows this chapter, he shall not putrefy in the God's cemetery, the Osiris. So this small little chapter does not even mention Anubis in here. It simply mentions how the body will be protected from putrefying, from bloating, and from decaying. And that is the spell of this one. All right, now we're entering spell chapter 46. So this goes right over here. Chapter for not perishing and for being alive in the God's domain. Words spoken by the Osiris Ani. O you young men, or young people, young men of 𝑓 in the morning, who have power over those who flash among the sun folk, I who move and sway to and fro, the Osiris. All right, now we're moving to chapter 50, which goes up here. This is the other papyrus, which is attached to this one. Chapter for not entering into the slaughterhouse of the god. Words spoken by the Osiris Ani. This is a word which is not pronounced. Now, there were 4 knots in a tying somebody, especially when the enemies of Egyptians, as I described in the beginning. So this one says knots, or tying of knots. So we'll say the 4 knots which are tied about me or around me by the guardian of the sky and the earth. As for Re or Ra, which continues here, who has given the day to make the knot tied firm for the inert ones, the ones who do not move, upon his thighs of the day, and that way of cutting off the locks of hair. This is 𝑓. We make a new sentence with it. As for my knot, which was tied around me by Set, its power, which continues here, power, in the 𝑓. And now we continue here. Where at first its uproar had come into being, when you had caused me to hail. in severing my father. I have taken, or I am taken, right there, the two lands. The knot which was tied by me or around me by 𝑓. When I saw it for the first time, seeing it. Ma'at, when the gods and the sacred images, which continues here, coming back down again, have not yet been born. And then we'll move over here. I am heaven born. Ew, a new sentence. I am in the presence of the great gods, the Osiris scribe, Ani, vindicated. So here's a perfect example of text being filled in for commercialization. Pre-written texts and the names of the authors are in there. All right, so now we're going to move over to the next chapter, which is a large section. It's chapter 93, and it starts right over here. Chapter for not letting a man this be ferried to the east in the god's domain, word spoken by the Osiris, Ani. Ani. O, you ho, which for a part of a boat, phallus, continues here, of 𝓤. Within it, which is injured by uproar, whose inertness came into being, or came into things, or into being. In the myriad, or millions, in Babé. I am stronger thereby than the strong ones. I am mightier thereby than the mighty ones. As for, if this I am not ferried, as for this, if I am not taken to the east. If the festivals of the rebels be done, therein may you slaughter or cut off the evil. In seeking there, or to binding the horns, may I not fall within the fish, which continues here, fish, by doing evil. Another chapter. As for this not doing any things evil to me by evil in binding of the horns. I did not swallow up in regarding to this phallus of 𝓤 and the head of Osiris. My crew of the ship will return to my tombs of decapitation of my gods, in which you will make answer within. I will not bind the horns of 𝓤, Khepri. So I will not become therein stones in the eye of a tomb. Him, the destroyer, which is right here, Atum the destroyer. I did not seize this. I did not this ferry to the east. If the festivals of the rebels be made therein, which continues therein, evil. I did not this do to you injury of evil. I did not ferry over to the east, which is right here, east, the Osiris scribe, counting of offering to the god and to all the gods, 𝓄𝓖, vindicated. All goodness and truth and gladness. All right, now we're entering the final chapter of this plate, chapter 43, preventing a man's decapitation in the god's domain, so not getting beheaded in the god's domain. So it starts right up here. Chapter for not allowing the decapitation of the head of a man therein in the god's domain, words spoken by the Osiris 𝓄𝓖. 𝓄𝓖 repeats again. I am the Great One, the Son of the Great One. I am the Flame, the Son of the Flame. To whom he has been given his head in after this had been cut off. This shall not be taken, the head of Osiris therein. And this shall not be taken, the head of the Osiris 𝓄𝓖 therein. Oh, I am knit together. Continues together. I am knit together. I am just, and I am young. So youth was important. The Osiris, or this Osiris, Lord of eternity. So this completes plate 16 and particular chapter 43 right here. We'll move on to plate 17 in the next video. Please stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed. If you like, please subscribe and follow. Follow me as well on Instagram. If you have TikTok, I'm there as well. Tumblr as well as Facebook. So thank you and have a great day.